Today in Lesson 16, we're going to continue looking at the Pilgrims and Puritans and settlers of the northern or New England colonies. When we left off yesterday, we were discussing the Mayflower Compact, which had a huge impact on the United States because the Pilgrims agreed to make laws for the common good, for the good of everyone, and that is a real foundation that will become a big part of the American government system and American ideas. The Pilgrims landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts. They had a very harsh first winter. They didn't have any shelter made yet. They ran out of food. They had to live on the boat at times, and over half of them died during that very first winter in Plymouth. However, they didn't give up. They still thought it was God's will for them to be in Massachusetts, and they didn't go home. They kept building, they kept working, they kept striving for success, and eventually they would have it. That may have been what the Mayflower Compact signing may have looked like on the boat. We really don't know. There wasn't an artist there. But that's a rendition of what it may have looked like. The next spring, things start getting better. They find some English-speaking Native Americans, and one in particular, Squanto, really helps them. He had been to England before. Squanto had gone back to England with an expedition before, and he was willing to help. He brought them local seeds from local plants. He showed them how to fertilize the soil with fish remains, which is very important because the soil is not very good in Massachusetts. He showed them how to fish and catch fish. He introduced them to other local Native American leaders. And through his efforts and their cooperation, they were able to establish good local relations with the local tribe of Native Americans. And they sealed this cooperation with a kind of violent attack. They did a surprise attack on a local tribe, another local tribe that was enemies of the tribes they were working with, and they used the Pilgrims' guns to slaughter and destroy that tribe with a kind of ambush-style attack on their village. You don't hear as much about that part of it, but the Pilgrims weren't totally peaceful in any way. There was violence, there was hardship, there was suffering in their story. And sometimes we don't hear as much about that as we should. To celebrate a great harvest and to celebrate a victory in battle, they had a great feast at the end of the harvest season. And of course that became known as Thanksgiving, which is one of the most popular holidays in the United States, one of my personal favorites. And they would have had a meal that would have been similar to what we have today. They would have had wild turkey, which is a little different than the turkey we eat today. They would have probably maybe had sweet potatoes, corn, beans, cornbread, pumpkin, so many of the tastes that we would have today. And they decided to do that annually, and of course it's grown to a great holiday. And maybe it would have looked something like this. The fact of the matter is we don't know 100% what it looked like, but they definitely shared a meal that's been recorded, and we continue that tradition today. And a big part of American culture is the idea of the cooperation, sharing, giving thanks for all we have with a meal during the Thanksgiving time. The Pilgrim community, it wasn't easy. It was a struggle. They had a lot. There wasn't great land for them to have, not like the Virginia. They had fertile soil or tobacco to bail them out. There wasn't many animals to hunt, but they did have the bounty of the ocean, and the New England waters are full of teeming with fish and shellfish and even whales that they hunted, and so they'll learn to use the sea as a provider for them, and then do some farming as well to supplement it. To survive, the families had to work together. Everybody worked. You might hear the Protestant work ethic that was definitely established by the Pilgrims. They worked hard. They stuck together. Women had more rights. And one thing that's extremely important was the education was important for them. In the southern colonies down in Jamestown and Virginia, people didn't get that much education. There wasn't a real need for it. But because these people were so religious, they wanted their children to be able to read the Bible. So all children went to school to learn how to read and write, and it paid dividends for their community and their culture as time went on. And even still today, Massachusetts ranks at the top of education in the United States of all the states, and at the top, one of the top spots in prosperity as well. So maybe those two things go together. As the Pilgrims had more success, word spread back to England, and thousands of more Puritans moved to America. They're led by John Winthrop, who set up the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which of course was a huge colony at the time, extending up into what now is Maine and beyond. Of course, eventually the state of Massachusetts will be born, and some of those other areas will be broken apart as time goes on. And if we look at the map here, this would all have been considered Massachusetts. As they had problems in Massachusetts with the English government took more and more land away from them, and eventually gave some land to Canada and broke it up into other colonies as well. So we'll continue looking at these Pilgrims and Puritans that really established many of the ideas and concepts that will make America in the next lesson as well. Thanks for your attention.